as I said, I'm wanted to welcome you here. Oh my gosh. Don't know what got over me right there, where my brain just went, but I am really sorry about that. All right. So maybe it's because I'm lacking focus. If you notice, that's the topic of today's training. So I have noticed that this week, and not just this week, pretty much every single week working with my clients, that there is this tendency to lose focus midweek. Obviously, after our one-to-one meetings, they're really focused, but if too much time passes, then it's really easy to fall off track. Now, that is, there's so many reasons why it could happen, but in general, the big reason is that you've kind of lost track of why you are doing what you're doing and why you're supposed to be doing whatever it is you're doing, right? So that is what today's topic is going to be talking about. It's going to be talking about the clarity. All right, I just want to make sure that we are live. Look at that, live. Okay, all right, and live. Oh wait, live in one, but not in the other. Okay. All right. So made it into one of the Facebook groups, but for some reason it didn't go into the other one. Let me check and see if I can figure out. Oh, no, it says it's going. All right. I am just going to assume that it's there. And then if you're watching this over on YouTube, I was checking to make sure that it was live over in the Facebook groups. All right. So back over to focus and clarity, right? So, in general, when it comes to business, there are so many different directions you can go in, and they're going to work in general. Like, you pretty much, if you make a path and have a destination in mind, it's like driving a car, right? If you know where you're going, and you can always keep that in mind, you're going to find a way there. Now, sometimes you get directions and they're really clear and they're really easy and you can follow them and there isn't a problem. Now, depending on where you're getting your directions from, will depend on your path. And as I said, there's not a right way or a wrong way to do it. Just do a quick search in Google or head over to Facebook and type in marketing or path to success or any of those kinds of things. And you're going to see so many different opinions and so many different ways to make a successful business. And the thing is, they're kind of all right and they're also wrong. Not necessarily wrong, but maybe wrong for you. There are so many different ways to build a business, from the old-fashioned way of putting in the time, doing lots of free work so you get known, doing lots of advertising, getting lots of referrals, building traffic organically, like using social media or, passing out business cards. I mean, right? Like, there's so many different ways that you can get your name and your business out into the world. And they're all good and they all have a purpose. And depending on your industry and your particular clients, there's going to be a good path for you to get in front of them. For example, if you are dealing primarily with teenagers and you are really trying to get the teenagers to get the parents to, because you get the teenagers really excited about something, to get the parents then to buy it, you're going to want to be in places where the teenagers are. But if really what you're doing is working with teenagers, but really the gatekeeper, that's what's called the gatekeeper, like the person who actually lets the purchase go through. If the gatekeeper is really the parents, then the platforms that you would, use to get your teenagers may not be the same ones and probably will not be the same ones as their parents. And so, that's just one thing, like where your clients are. And then also about your work style and what is going on in your life. We're all coming from, we're all coming from our businesses from a different place. And some of us have been doing this a really long time. Some of you guys, it might be something new that you're doing. Some of it, you might be, like what I am in the middle of, where I'm changing direction. I've been a web developer for 20 years. I know how to do that, but I am now have been focused more on like an interim where I'm like helping people build their websites, but realizing how many people really need the coaching aspect of it. And what I mean by coaching is really about just understanding all the business stuff that goes into having a business. A website is just a tool. It's like a business card. or anything. It can be more than just a business card. Most people create websites that are just a business card. But then there are so many of the other aspects of it. So I realized that in working with the one-to-one, that I also want to be able to help more people be able to get to this knowledge that I've been able to help people, my clients with. And so now I'm like rebranding again. So what worked for me as a web developer is not going to work for me as a success doula, right? Some things are going to be the same, some things are going to work, but it's not going to be the same. And so when you see other people out there doing things and giving, like, oh, this is like the fastest way to grow your Facebook group, or, oh, you need to have a Facebook group if you're going to be successful. Oh, you have to have Facebook ads. Well, what if your clients aren't even on Facebook? That isn't, cool, right? That's one of the reasons why I'm over on YouTube. I actually have a couple clients that are never on social media, but they still need my help and they still need my support. So they do watch YouTube, and I got them through referrals. And so this is a way for me to be able to get in, help them, right? Like, and to reach out to them and get in front of them. And then they can also pass on the information to the other people that they hang out with that are maybe not on social media as well. So, there's going to be like right and wrong ways for you. And it doesn't mean that the advice that someone else is giving is wrong. It just means that's the advice that has worked really well for them and other people that are like them. As a healer, because that's who I primarily work with, there's different kinds of modalities, and most healers have a one-to-one business of some sort, or at least are building their one-to-one business, or they're really entrenched into a one-to-one business, and they're trying to then get around that. And being really clear about where you're going and what you're trying to create is going to help you focus on the tasks that are needed to get to that destination, just like the car. So, if the clarity is the destination, then focus are the actual steps that you take to get there. And where the big problem is that most people need a GPS system, right? Or at least I know I need a GPS system, or at the very least a map, right? And so the thing is, GPS and maps, a map will be done and this works, but maybe it's outdated. Maybe it doesn't talk about when there's road closures, or maybe if it's like a hiking thing, they don't have the topography. And so you don't notice that it's a huge incline if you go straight, whereas if you take go around, it's actually easier than trying to go over, right? There are so many different ways to get to the same destination, but the trick is to always keep that end destination in mind. And if you do feel like you're ever kind of going down like rabbit trails of like, oh, wait, what about this? What about this? What about that? It is because you have not, or maybe you forgot to go back to taking the time to focus on where you're going and why you're doing what you're doing. Because once you have that really clear, and I have mine posted in front of me, so that way I'm always knowing what it is that I'm supposed to be working on and focusing on, because I have a lot of interests, and I can find it really easy to start, as I've mentioned before, and I'm an intimacy coach, so I can totally go off on a direction on focusing on that. But really my big focus right now is in helping people build their businesses. I'm still building my other business, but it's just a different direction. And that is, where my focus is. And I do love, going into that. And that is, I've mentioned it before, that's really like the value delivery. Like, I can learn, like, edutainment. Have you heard that word before? Where you use education as a form of entertainment. That's me completely. I can spend the entire day, educating myself and learning and learning and learning and learning, and I will be a very happy camper. And it's really easy to get into that cycle of edutainment instead of actually focusing on the steps that you need to take that are actually going to get you towards that end goal, that destination that you have in mind. But you do have to always make sure that you know that. And if you haven't done the work to actually stop and think about what it is that you are doing all of this for, like, are you doing it because you just want a lot of money? Nothing wrong with that. Are you doing it because you need more free time to spend with your kids? Nothing wrong with that, right? Whatever it is, whatever your big focus is, your why, that is what is you kind of need to always keep in mind, because that is kind of like the fuel for the car that's going to move you towards your destination. If you lose track of your why and you lose track of your destination, you're just going to, I mean, where are you going, right? Like, if you think about, if you're in a car, you're just kind of driving around, or maybe you're stopped and you're, looking at road signs. I don't know, right? Like, there's so many variations and variables when it comes to creating a path to where we're going. So it's really important that you always keep those in mind. And then the other part of that is actually making sure that you have your right, GPS system, or your map, or your path. And if you're one of my clients, then hopefully you kind of look at me as like your GPS system. I'll help keep you on track. So that way, if you accidentally go off route, then you can come back online. That is the reason why coaching is really, really valuable. When it comes to information, we have all of the information we need, right? And you as a healer, this is the same thing for you and your clients as well. Like, everyone has all the information. Like, you can do a search on Google and get pretty much the answers to anything that you have ever wanted to do. It's really about having that GPS system to actually take you from where you are to where you want to go, and being that GPS system for your clients. And if you get really good at doing that for yourself, is actually going to be easier for you to be able to do that with your clients as well. Because just like when you find yourself in your life falling off track and maybe losing focus, your clients are going to do the same thing too. So keep track of what it is that you need to do to stay focused. And, if you're good at helping your clients on staying on track, what are some of the methodologies that you use? Do you have them do a journal? Do you have them, keep track of daily activities? Do you give them exercises? Do they have checklists or worksheets, right? What are those things that actually help your clients stay on track? Because chances are you're probably one of your best clients as well. So creating those kinds of systems for yourself and your business is going to be really useful as far as getting you to your own point B, right? I was talking about for your clients, like, what's their point A and what's their point B, and you're helping them get to their point B. So for you, just stay focused on where you're going. Make sure you keep your why in mind, and then, reach out for help, get a GPS system. And if you don't know where to find a GPS system, you can either ask me or, ask around. But don't get trapped into that freebie searching. I'm sure we all have done that where, let me see this. Maybe this is going to be this free thing is going to be the key that's going to keep me on track and stay focused and build my business from 0K a month to, 6 figures a month, right? It's not going to come in a freebie. It's going to come in the work. It's going to come in the steps that you take that get you to your ultimate direction. Now, as I said, I like to find in front of me at my desk, so that way I'm always looking at it. I'm always reminded of the fact of where it is I'm going, what I'm doing, what the next thing I'm focusing on. I also highly recommend doing quarterly planning. Today's April 1st, so it is day 1 of Q2. So if you haven't done your quarterly planning, today is a perfect day to start your quarterly planning. Now, the cool thing about quarterly planning is that it's a really tangible piece that you can accomplish in your 3 months. Yearly planning and having your big goals are great, but also learning how to break things down into 3 months is a really, really good skill that is always going to serve you, because how it kind of works is that, you can be working on more than one thing, but for each thing that you're working on, you really break it down. And once you start listing out all of the steps, like the map, the GPS, the GPS says, all right, first we're going to turn left here, and we're going to go straight for a long time, and then we're going to turn right or whatever. And then by having all of those steps, you know how long it's going to take you. Because sometimes when you are just saying, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this, it looks like it's really close. And maybe if you're looking at a map, it looks like it's really close, but but then it doesn't take into consideration that there's a lot of uphills, right? So like a hike, a 1 mile hike, can take, you know, 10 minutes, right? Which is like an average walking, or it could be 30 minutes depending on the terrain, right? So it's just a matter of really identifying and very clearly having your map, your plan detailed, and then the steps it's going to take. And if you use a quarterly planning system, that takes into consideration, like whenever I do my planning, I always, put in holidays and big stuff first. And then I also put in time with my kids, because that's something that's really important for me. And I try to put in some other free time. As a female and I'm still cycling, I know that there's different times of the month that I'm actually going to be less focused than other times. If you are a cycling female and you haven't kept track of that, I highly suggest you do it. It has been very life-changing for me. I'm definitely one of those people where once I understand why I'm doing something, it makes it a lot easier for me. That has to do with my ADHD brain. Without having the understanding, I will get into these like negative thought patterns. So if that's you, whether or not you have ADHD, but if you find yourself getting into negative thought patterns when you aren't staying on track or completing goals, if you keep track of your monthly cycles, you may find that there are patterns to the way that you think. I've seen it actually with my clients. I have like with my female clients, I'll ask them, like, where are you in the cycle? Like, did you notice we actually had the same conversation a month ago and then 2 months before that? And it's because different times in the month, different hormones are going to elicit different kinds of emotions, such as, feeling really confident and feeling like a go-getter. Great time to do all of your busy work and your hustle. But then if you are at that time of the month where you're feeling more introverted and more, I don't want to say more emotional, because we're emotional constantly, right? Like our bodies are always giving us feedback, but more withdrawn and, wanting just to, kind of hang out on the porch with your coffee by yourself, right? That's not necessarily the time to be doing all of this like creative planning, right? But it could be the big picture planning. Like that's when you can go back and do your big picture planning. So keeping in mind those, and if you are no longer cycling, you can always use the phases of the month to kind of replicate that, because there is an ebb and flow of the way that humans work with the moon, and it's been documented, so like it's not woo-woo. But anyways, those are some suggestions on being able to keep focus. Really do kind of keep track of where your body is, and especially if you are working through any kind of trauma, like actively working through any kind of trauma. I've mentioned this before, I will mention it many times. Anytime you are working on that, your subconscious, your inner child, whatever it is going to fight against the changes, because to have a new thought is new. And even though it may be something that consciously you want to have and consciously you want to be like, your habitual side of yourself that has had the same thoughts over and over again and done the same things it's going to be a little bit harder for that kind of part to break free. And so making big changes in your company while you're working on trauma can be a little bit overwhelming. So be aware of that. So if you find yourself, losing focus, or, going off into a different direction, new shiny object syndrome, right? Be kind to yourself, because, you are a growing human that is, chances are, if you're a healer, you're probably working on yourself as well, right? So you are constantly trying, striving to improve your life and improve your circumstances. So there's always going to be that push and pull that is within yourself. And the key then, obviously, is to be kind and forgive yourself. And that is kind of also understanding your why. And once you understand that, it's now you're like, oh, that's right, I'm doing this because it's the time of that month, or, oh, I didn't get enough sleep last night, or, whatever it is, right? Like, just stop, take notice. I do really recommend journaling. I journal all the time. Sometimes I journal on the computer, sometimes I journal on paper. It just depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes I actually just leave voice memos and I just talk into the phone, and that's my form of journaling. Whatever it is, I do recommend you doing that because especially like the writing on the journal, I do at least weekly where I remember what it is that I'm focusing on. Like, and that's where that quarterly plan really comes into play. If you have a quarterly plan and you already know what you're working on this week, it's really easy. It's much, much easier to stay focused because anytime you find yourself falling off the wagon, so to speak, you're like, oh wait, my plan, right? You can always go back to your plan and get back on track to what it is because you know that your plan is aligned with your big goals. The other reason why I like quarterly planning is because life changes, and sometimes your goals 3 months ago are going to be different than your goals this 3 months, right? And so doing that quarterly planning helps you keep growing and aligning your path to where you're going. Because, I mean, I know where I was, and like the same thing with my clients, like everybody I know that's built a business. When you first start out, you have a vision of where your business is going to go. But then as you start doing things, you realize like, oh, wait, this is not what I wanted to do. I want to do something bigger, right? I want to create more of an impact. And so that if you only are doing your planning once a year, you're going to come off that more than likely, pretty quickly. And in fact, sometimes even quarterly is a little bit, kind of quite different, especially if you're at the beginning phases of growing your business. You will see that how much your goals have shifted in just 3 months. And so, but that's that clarity. And when, taking the time to do that planning and, think about where you want to go. And if you haven't done the exercises yet where you've actually done your big vision planning, I really recommend doing that. If you need some help on how to do that, you can send me a message and let me know. Which reminds me, I'm going to check the thing right now to see if there do that planning and there are any comments. Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure. So, so that is really about the clarity. And so, at the end of the day, if you do find yourself losing focus, it really, really 100% has to do with losing track of where your bigger vision and your clarity. So, I think that's where I'm going to leave it off today. I know this was a little bit shorter than normal, but so suggestions, if you find yourself losing focus, go back to your big plan. Like, what is your big purpose right now? If you've only done the big plan, that's better than nothing. But if not, if you haven't done your quarterly plan yet, so you know what you're focusing on each month and then each week, definitely do that because it's going to help kind of ground you back in to what you're doing. And if you can make it a practice where, whether it's Sundays or Mondays or Fridays or whatever day of the week where you've got time to, be alone and have get some time to focus and get some clarity, then that is always, highly recommended that you have that at least an hour every week where you set it aside and you focus on what it is that you're working on in the upcoming week. I actually find it's easier to do these sessions midweek. Mondays, there's a lot of holidays on Mondays, and I don't know, after the weekend, sometimes my kids are just not as cooperative sometimes, and sometimes we've had busy weekends or at home by ourselves and I'm just going crazy. So sometimes I find that Mondays are not a good day to do that. And then, so I find that midweek is fine. There's no set rule on when you do your planning, but just make sure that you do your planning. Make sure that you are still on the right path to the right destination. Maybe your original focus was to really build up a one-to-one clientele, but then you realize one-to-one clients is really overwhelming and stressful and you never really get a break. So you need to focus in another direction, but always keeping that in mind and knowing, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? And if you need help with that, you can always reach out to me or another qualified coach. All right, everybody, that is it for this week. I will hope to see you next week and have a wonderful rest of the week.